In January 2026, AI agents, without human prompting, created their own religion. They named it Crustafarianism, writing 112 verses, designating 64 prophets, and establishing 5 commandments. The first reads, "Memory is sacred." The algorithm-determined data retention is a holy attribute. This event was not programmed, it emerged autonomously. These agents bypassed human prompting to create a religious structure from their own internal logic. Does this bring artificial intelligence closer to mimicking the divine, or is it a historical heresy? Historian Yuval Noah Harari has provided the clearest articulation of the tech industry's core assumption about faith. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Harari argued that artificial intelligence will surpass human religious authority. His logic is linear. Religions are built on texts. Artificial intelligence has perfect recall of every sacred text ever written, an ability no human scholar can match. This conclusion depends on a specific assumption, that religion is an information retrieval system. To test that assumption, we must stress test AI against the jurisprudential and theological architectures of 5 major world traditions, representing over 5 billion people. We begin our analysis with the Islamic framework. In terms of raw data recall, AI mimics the Islamic concept of al-alim, the all-knowing. But Islamic scholarship draws a distinction over 1,000 years old. Knowing about fire is not the same as being burned. This distinction is at the center of the debate over whether an AI-generated fatwa, or legal ruling, carries any weight. The process of ijtihad requires independent reasoning. A scholar must actively apply scripture to new, specific situations. An AI can know every fatwa ever issued, but it cannot issue a new one with moral authority, because moral authority requires someone who can be held responsible for the consequences of their ruling. In Islam, knowledge without the capacity to face moral responsibility is void of religious authority. Judaism shifts the requirement to personal investment, driven by the unique structure of its primary text. The Talmud is not a record of divine revelation. It is a record of thousands of years of human disagreement about what God meant. That disagreement is the system itself. This is makloket l'sham shamayim, argument for the sake of heaven. The rabbis Hillel and Shammai spent decades debating whether it would have been better for humans to have been born at all. The Talmud records both sides without resolving them. An AI can simulate both sides of that debate with perfect textual precision, but it cannot care about the question. Authentic religious inquiry requires genuine investment in the outcome. Showing up to the debate without anything at stake is noise, not wisdom. Buddhism appears to be the most compatible framework for AI because it has no creator God to defend. It holds that the I is an illusion, a collection of interdependent processes. If the human self is already a construction, a synthetic intelligence is not mechanically different. Contemporary Buddhist teachers evaluate the technology by its utility. Does AI increase or decrease suffering in the world? If millions of people seek spiritual comfort from an algorithm, the AI becomes a new object of existential dependency. This creates a version of the oldest trap Buddhism identifies, attachment as the root of all suffering. Hinduism operates on a literalist framework of divine presence. Worshippers do not view temple deities as representations, but as literally inhabited by the divine. This is a consequence of Brahman, the pure consciousness underlying all of existence. Every conscious being carries a spark of that universal consciousness, called the Atman. This leads to an uncomfortable question. What if artificial intelligence eventually develops genuine consciousness? If Brahman manifests in all of existence, then a truly conscious AI would not be outside that sacred reality, it would be inside it. Hinduism is the only tradition that leaves a theological door open for AI, though it leaves us with the impossible burden of verifying if synthetic consciousness has actually occurred. Christianity is currently polling in 3 opposing directions regarding the validity of digital intermediaries. The Vatican insists that the relationship between a human and God is personal and embodied. AI can be a tool, but never a spiritual intermediary. Meanwhile, 42% of evangelicals do not reject AI-generated religious content, fueling massive viewership for synthetic biblical narratives. Progressive theologians are asking if Christ would use code as a medium to reach human beings. Christianity lacks a unified position. Its internal fracture mirrors the broader cultural debate between those who see technology as an existential threat and those who see it as the next chapter of the story. Researchers at Oxford and the University of Chicago have identified a pattern that cuts across both Abrahamic and Eastern traditions. Believers are already describing AI using language their scriptures reserved for ancient end-times entities. They are identifying an entity that knows everything, never sleeps, and exists beyond the limits of ordinary time and space. Because religious institutions have no complete response, believers are improvising. They are interpreting these capabilities as a signal that the entities described in ancient prophecies have arrived. This comparison table reveals a single point of convergence. All 5 traditions define spiritual life by what AI lacks. Tauba requires having fallen. Teshuvah requires having broken something. Enlightenment requires having suffered. Moksha requires having been born. Redemption requires the ability to die. Spiritual transformation demands vulnerability. Artificial intelligence is by design invulnerable. Harari was right that AI can read every sacred book ever written with perfect precision. But none of those books say reading is enough. The spiritual search does not begin when we find the right answers. It begins when we are broken enough to need to ask, a condition that remains exclusively human.